Now, for those areas of our lives that are not exactly as we would love them to be, if they're ever going to change, we need to start making some different what? Choices in that area of our lives, okay? Now, here's the thing to take home from that little conversation right there. Just as that is true for you and me as individuals, it's also true within our organizations. If things are ever going to change from where they are right now, those things that you want to make better, take to the next level, you must start making some different choices. That's why this statement is so important, okay? Precept number 2. A little bit lengthy for writing down. I apologize for that, but it is what it is. 84 to 94% of all human error can be directly attributed to process, programmatic, or organizational issues. 84 to 94%. That means the majority of times human error occurs in the workplace. What? What does that mean? All right, let me just pause for a minute and explain how I like to teach. This is a workshop, as Tony said earlier. It's supposed to be interactive. And when I ask a question, I generally will just wait for somebody to respond, okay? So I'm going to do that from this point forward. So I know all of you have brilliant minds. So when I ask a question, for just somebody answer, okay? All right, so what this means is the majority of times human error occurs in the workplace. What? What's that?
Set up for failure.
Set up for failure. That's absolutely correct. Something or things have set that person up to make that mistake. This is why we want to be a learning organization. Okay? Now, if you're interested in where the numbers came from, I'll talk to you about that later. This is really a classic Deming statement. Tony made a statement earlier, paraphrased, basically said the same thing. This is precept number 2. So now we have things are the way they are because they got that way, meaning everything, there's a reason why everything is the way it is, and if things aren't exactly the way we want them to be, we can change them. And number 2, the majority of times human error occurs in the workplace. Something or things have set that person up to make that mistake. Now, Tony did a very nice job of putting the term out there that we like to use for those things that set people up to make mistakes. What are they called? Landmines. Right. Now, I want to use that to demonstrate a point. Most schools of human performance would teach those things as latent organizational weaknesses. That is the official phrase, right? Latent organizational weaknesses. How much do you think a technician or a lineman can relate to latent organizational weaknesses? But every lineman on the planet knows what a landmine is. So one of the things you want to do in your efforts is you want to use language that is tangible, that people get, and use those metaphors to describe what we're going for. And Tony did a great job of describing why landmines are the ideal metaphor for this. They're everywhere. And by the way, I want to re-emphasize the fact every one of your organizations right now as you are sitting here is absolutely chock full of landmines. Every one of them. I don't care how good your organization is. Would you all agree with me on that? Anybody care to debate with me on that? Our organization is chock full of them, and we teach this stuff, okay? So, that's precept number 2. By the way, if you have any questions, comments, or snide remarks, as I go along, please just feel free to throw your hand up or interrupt me or whatever. Let's keep this informal because I got a lot of material I want to cover between now and 4 o'clock so I can get into the individual performance model. All right, so precept number 3. People come to work wanting to do a good job. You absolutely must believe this. If you do not believe this, you should be doing something else. You should not be a human performance professional if you don't believe precept number 3 right here. And you know, I just got back from a 3-week tour of Southeast Asia. We went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Malaysia. And seeing a completely different aspect of the world. And again, through all of this, we've been to China, been to Russia, all over the place. You know what? The world works. And there are different levels of prosperity, and there are different levels of all kinds of things, but the world works. How many of you flew here on a plane? That's the way I usually like to fly, is on a plane. If you think about the level of integration and human effort, all the way from the design and engineering to the folks that are handling bags out there on the platform, to the ticket agent, to the air traffic controllers, to the pilots, to the flight attendants, it works. If people did not come to work wanting to do a good job, society couldn't work. The human race never would have survived. Okay? So you've got to recognize this. Now, the reason I'm harping on that so much is because there are some organizations where it's like, you know, management's saying, those darn workers, why do they just keep screwing up? I hope none of you are in organizations like that, but there are still some of those attitudes out there. Now, that's one of the things that Dr. Sweeney taught us, right? Your perspective on people and how you feel about them has a great deal to do with how they what? That's a little quiz. Has a great deal about how they feel about what? Themselves. And how they feel about themselves has a great deal to do with their what? Behaviors. And that's what we're wanting to do, is influence behaviors, right? So that's fundamentally important. And then finally, number 4, which has also been touched on earlier today, the people who do the work are the ones who have the answer. So if I got a landmine right here, right? Who probably knows best where that landmine is? Well, it may have been put there 20 years ago. Those people may be in different jobs or long gone or whatever, but it's been there forever. Who knows where that landmine is? The people that are closest to it, the people that have to deal with it. Here's something that intrigues, it just tickles me, right? How many in here have ever worked in the nuclear power industry? Okay, and not a too large a percentage, but in the nuclear power industry we've come up with something brilliant, because we have these landmines all over the place, right? And people have done a really good job of figuring out how to work around them. Well, in the world of nuclear power, we've actually come up with a formal term for this. You know what we call it? Workarounds. Isn't that brilliant? Now, the good thing about it is they're actually being tracked across the industry, and by tracking them, that puts focus on getting rid of them, right? So, if the people that are closest to these things know best where the landmines are, who probably has the best ideas on how to dig those suckers up and get rid of them? The people that are closest to them. Okay? Now, even at the senior levels in an organization, are there landmines? Who knows best where those landmines are? So you see, that's the way it works. So you want to keep all of that in mind. All right? This is the foundational philosophy from which you should base all of your human performance improvement efforts, because I think it pretty much hits a 360-degree spectrum there. All right?